Mr. Mwewa shares a terrifying story of how he was picked up by police in the dead of night and given until 12 o'clock to complete a task or face jail time. The President and the Minister of Home Affairs are mentioned.
Last year, 2024, mid last year, I was sitting at home, and at about 10 p.m., close to 11, I stayed up a little later than usual, and I decided to post something that I had heard earlier that day. Let me take you back. So earlier on the same day, I was doing my vlogging in City Market and on the street, and two young men approached me, two young bus drivers. Now, these are guys that I know them facially. That is to say, I can recognize their visage. I don't know their personal names. I don't know where they live. I don't know anything about their social, interpersonal relationship makeup. These are people I just see on a regular basis, you know, like many people I see here. And so these two young guys walked up to me and said, in vernacular, in Nyanja, says, did you know that there's a woman in England? There's a woman, Kulandanyuku. She is sponsoring someone to throw a stone at the head of state when he comes to Kanyama. I said, really? He said, yeah. So I said to these two guys, I said, so who's this person? He said, no, he's a friend of ours. I said, well, and how does this person know this lady in England? The lady I'm talking about is, I don't know her name. I think she calls herself the Iron Lady or the Iron Boss Woman or something like that. So I said to these two guys, I said, so who's this guy? They said, no, he's a friend of ours. So can I meet him maybe, talk to him, find out more? They said, yeah, sure. We can bring him over to your office and you can talk to him. So that was early on that day. So later on that night, you know, as I do, I'm on my phone, and I remember this conversation that I had with these two guys. And so I decided to post that. I said, there's a lady in England that apparently, allegedly, is going to sponsor someone to throw a stone at the head of state when he visits Kanyama. I posted that. That was close to 22 hours, almost 20, yes, it was 22 hours, 10 p.m. I posted that, I went to sleep, we went to sleep. About 45 minutes later, my phone rings. And, you know, my wife was thinking, who's calling you at 11 o'clock at night? And I'm thinking, who's calling me? And how many people know that when you get a phone call late at night, it's never a good thing. So I look at my phone, it's a number I've never registered, I don't recognize the number, and so I answer it. And there's a man on the other side of the line. It says, Mr. Mwewa. I said, yes, sir. My name is, and he said his name. He said, I'm from Force Headquarters. Now, Force Headquarters to me is what the CIA is to America. Okay, Force Headquarters is different from Central. When you get a phone call from Force Headquarters, it's never a good thing. They don't want to call you to say hello. They don't want to call you to invite you to their birthday party. When Force Headquarters phones you, it means you're in trouble. And it means it's a big problem. So I said, yes, sir, can I help you? He says, yes, Mr. Mwewa, we're actually outside your gate. We're at your house. I said, do you have my house? He said, yes, sir. I said, is there a problem? Oh, we need to talk to you. Right now? Yes, this very moment. If you could come outside, either that or open the gate and let us in. So I turned to my wife, and my wife says, who is that? I said, oh, it's Force Headquarters. She says, what do they want with you? I said, well, I don't know. She says, well, are you going to go out there? I said, well, I'm going to have to. So, I get up, I'm getting dressed, and the whole time I'm getting dressed, I'm thinking, what have I done? What is the deal? So, I put my shoes on, and then my wife, she says, I'm coming with you. I said, no, honey, just stay here. I'll let you know what the deal is. She said, no, let's go out there together. So she gets her robe and puts her slippers on, and she's trailing behind me. And as she's walking behind me, she says, you better not be in trouble. I mean, the last thing I need right now is for you to be in trouble. I said, honey, just relax. Give me a moment, okay? So, we walk out of the house, walk to the main gate, and there's a guard there. And I said to the guard, I said, you can open the gate. So I opened the gate, and there are these two plainclothes police officers standing outside of my gate. And they were very cordial. They were very nice. They said, Mr. Mwewa, my name is so-and-so. He told me his name. This is my colleague, so-and-so. Sorry to barge in on you like this at this very late hour, but we need to talk to you. I said, about what? I said, oh, it's just something you posted about the head of state. And then it dawned on me. I said, oh, Lord, here we go. I said, what about the post? Because, we just need to get some more information from you. Mrs. Mwewa, you're going to have to let your husband come to Force Headquarters with us. But we'll bring him back. You don't have anything to worry about. Now, I've dealt with the police enough to know that may not always be the case. When a police officer says to you, he's going to bring you back, honey, take that with a grain of salt. My wife she just said, why are you taking him? And what is all this about? Now, at this stage, my wife didn't really know that I'd posted this. So I said, honey, I did a post, and I think they want to talk to me about that. So the officer says, Mrs. Mwewa, don't worry about anything. We're going to be there maximum maybe an hour, and we'll bring him right back. You don't even have to drive him there. Rest assured, we'll bring him back. I said, honey, let's do what they say. Okay, I'll be back 1 hour. So I get in the car, and we drive from my house all the way to Force Headquarters. And the whole trip, these two officers were very nice. We were laughing and joking, and they were telling me about, how social media has become so toxic. And so we finally get to the Force Headquarters, which is the red brick building. So we go to one of the floors there. I sit down, and there are 4 officers in there, 2 male, 2 female. Now, at about this time, this is almost now 11, this is going on to about 11:35, 11:45 p.m. So we walk into the room, they say, Mr. Mwewa, take a seat. These 4 officers, they flip open some like writing pads that they were going to write on. And they said, Mr. Mwewa, the reason we've called you is because of the post that you just made regarding the head of state. We'd like to know who these people are that you referred to in your post. Because as you know, anyone that talks about the head of state's well-being, we pay attention to that. And that could potentially be a problem for us. So we need to get to the bottom of whatever the hell this thing is. Tell us everything you know about these people that you talked about. And then I remembered the 2 young guys. I said, yeah, sure, I'll tell you. So I explained to them that, I vlog, and these 2 bus drivers came to me and they told me that they heard that there's some lady in England who was funding someone who was going to throw a rock at the head of state when he visited Kanyama. And they said, interesting. So they said, do you know who these two young men are? I said, well, I don't know them personally, but I do know who they are. So, Mr. Mwewa, we're going to have to ask you to bring those people in. Now, technically speaking, we're supposed to hold you because you have vital information. But because you say you know these people, we're going to let you go. You can go home, but you need to be back here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then we'll let you know what we're going to do after that. I said, okay, so I can go? So, yeah, but be here at 8. So they took me back home. My wife, naturally, she couldn't sleep, and she said, so what do they call you for? So I explained everything to her, and I said, I need to be back there at 8 o'clock. So my wife said, so who are these people? I said, honey, they're just bus drivers. I said, bus drivers from where? I said, from City Market. She says, are you going to be able to identify who they are? I said, honey, I know them. I'll just find out who they are. I'll take them to the police. They will give the police the information that the police are looking for. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. She said, you better believe I'm worried about it. So we go to bed. I get up early in the morning. I go to force headquarters. The same police officers are there waiting for me. Mr. Mwewa, welcome. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to let you go. We're going to give you up until 12 midday today. You need to find out who those two bus drivers that you claim told you and gave you this information. And you need to bring them here. If you don't bring them here, Mr. Mwewa, I'm afraid you are going to be a person of interest to us. Look at it this way, and when the officer gave me this example, I tell you, my blood curdled. The hair on the back of my head stood up. I felt lightheaded for a moment. I thought, oh Lord, what have I put myself into? The officer says to me, he says, Mr. Mwewa, imagine you've got a big bucket of water on top of your head. It's on top of your head. The only way that this bucket is going to be removed, Mr. Mwewa, is if you get it and put it on someone else's head. When you do that, you are out of the picture. The person now that is in the picture is the one that you have put that water on his head. But if you don't produce the person that you've put the water on their head, I'm afraid, Mr. Mwewa, you are going to be our person of interest. I said, I can do that. All I got to do is just go out there and look for those guys and bring them in. So I left force headquarters, went straight into City Market. Like any number to fly City Market. Yo, bwana, ili very fikire dom. Let fina yoku na yoku imu abulumendu bale bali kwisa. Ba ni chitambala ubafuna chanyiwe. You know, in City Market, when you start asking too many questions, hey, people get very nervous. And you know, I'm trying as best as I can to play it off. No, I just need them. But who Sakira Chan? But Chan. Lekeni tufuaye bwana tufuaye tunake. Era about 12 at 12 koloko. Na nshaponi 9, 10, 11. Inenet na chapo na ya ina fwa balance ndafye ine pantu uyo abantu abanga ngashaba sange ine chapo na ya chapo ya Gloria. I thought to myself, it's funny now, but at the time it was not funny. Now mona 11:15, and those officers were very clear. They said, Mr. Mwewa, if you don't bring those people by 12 today, I'm afraid that is your Waterloo. Don't be surprised at what's going to happen, because the safety of the head of state is paramount. And anyone who gives a slight hint that the head of state's safety could potentially be in danger, that person becomes a person of interest. So it's your Waterloo. You go out there, find them. If you don't find them, Mwewa, it won't be good. 11:45 inyamaka yampwa inyamaka umutwe fwasa umutima uleti. And in a brief moment of an epiphany, in a brief moment of desperation, I said, I have no choice. I have to do the unthinkable. I have to go see Honorable Jack Mwimbu. Now, I've never met by Jack Mwimbu. I only see him on social media. I'd never even spoken to by Jack Mwimbu. For those of you that may not know, Jack Mwimbu is the Minister of Home Affairs. 11:45 na afika kulia ku office kulia kuli ba Jack Mwimbu nimpiba. Now remember, to see a minister is not a walk in the park. Usually when you go to attempt to see a minister, it is more likely that you will see the minister if you make an appointment ahead of time. But if you just go there, no appointment, no prior arrangement, chances are you won't see that minister. The secretary there will just simply say, no, make an appointment. But because I was so desperate, I was at my wit's end. I get to the minister's office. I walk in and the secretary is standing there. And I said to her, I'm here to see the minister. The first thing she asked me, she says, hi, Mr. Mwewa, do you have an appointment? I said, no. So she says, take a seat. She gets on the phone. She says, does a bit of talking, and then she says, oh, by the way, there's a Mr. Mwewa here to see you. Yes. Yes, sir. Puts the phone down, looks at me, and she says, you can go see him. I got up, walked into the door. When I walked into Honorable Mwimbu's office, the first thing he said, he was sitting behind his desk, he sprung out of his chair and he said, Mr. Mwewa, welcome. How are you, my brother? I haven't seen you. I was going to say I haven't seen you in a long time, but I'd never met the Jack Mwimbu. But he was so welcoming. He was so happy to see me. Filamba fiafika no. Namba okulira. Na Jack Mwimbu basa. Ba unfa na kamwensa. Mwewa. What's wrong, my brother? Chishi. Inga chishi cha chitika we. He was saying this in English. Na nshaponi ndila. That fear minister. Alaire ni ninjiretera ne pano ninjiretera shishona fya kuchitaga tushinga na baranjikata ne chapoide nayo. He says, what's the problem? I explained the problem to the minister. The whole time I was explaining, he was just looking at me. And finally he said, Mr. Mwewa, don't worry about that. We know your heart was in the right place. We know you're just trying to protect HH. There was no malicious intent on your part. What is the number of the officer that told you you have to be there at 12? Sir, I even have his card here. Cardi. The minister took the card, got on his phone, phoned the man, You are supposed to see Mr. Mwewa at 12. I'm with him here. It's all sorted out. Thank you. And that's how the problem disappeared. Mzinga Melu says, your network is your net worth. Had I not taken a chance to go see Honorable Mwimbo, I would have been in jail. Weni palia ila moment ina chapo ina bansenda. What's the lesson? Let's not be so quick to post stuff. Oh, I tell you, I learned my lesson that night. Slept like a baby that night. Bushenga bweka shop. Shaka bweka shop bwana. Think before you post. Okay. Thought I'd share that with you. Thanks for watching. Bye.